Hey guys, welcome to another episode of the Beyond Sunday podcast where we desire to take the conversation deeper. My name's Devin and I'm joined with my friend Shreya. How are you doing today?
Good. Thanks. How are you?
I'm great.
Nice.
All right, before we dive into the conversation, take a look at this video.
All right, guys, welcome back. So, Devin, tell us where we were at this week. What was our big idea? What were the scriptures, the text we were in?
Yeah, the big idea on this week of coming to the tail end of the Epiphany season is that the law is fulfilled through Jesus. So we were in Matthew 5 again. Last week was the Beatitudes. This one, the finished part of that in Matthew 5 of salt and light, but also Jesus' statement to the crowd that he has not come to abolish the law, but to fulfill it. And then that for us led us to finish or to bring in Isaiah 58, which is talking about the fast that they were observing, but some of the things that were existing in there that were not obedient or offered a sort of transformed heart, as well as the observing Sabbath and or not observing Sabbath, I think is maybe more accurate to what Isaiah is bringing out in 58.
Yeah. Yeah. We were in those same places, but kind of flip-flopped for us. And this felt a little bit like a part two from last week for us here. Last week we were talking about the way that Jesus revealed righteousness and how oftentimes we've conflated righteousness with religion. But Jesus actually shows us something different in that, and that uh, when we use the ways that we've been blessed to bless those around us, or for the prosperity of the places that we've been planted, that God calls that righteous. So seeking justice, loving mercy, walking humbly with Him. And so this felt like an echo of that, or a continuation of that in the ways that we understand the laws and like why we follow the laws. And so we went back to Micah 6:8 from last week, or 6 through 8 from last week.
Mhm.
And that led us into Isaiah 58 because there's an echo in both of those spaces, this idea of like, God, we're giving you this thing, sacrifice, this, our fasting or whatever. We're giving this to you. Why aren't you responding the way we want you to? Kind of idea. Aren't you pleased with us? And God calls out in both of those spaces, like the heart posture is wrong. So that's where we started. We were also at tables this Sunday. So every so often, we do church around the table, just as a space to kind of mix things up a little bit. But what it allows for is more of a conversation and a wrestling through what God's saying in the moment, instead of me offering something that they get to go chew on throughout the rest of the week. We get to kind of do that in that space. And so that's where we started with Micah and with Isaiah 58, and the question of like, what is it that you're bringing to the altar? So,
Mhm.
what in this space, either in our emotions and like, are we being honest with God where we're at, but also like, are we checking boxes off that we've decided are like, these are the good things to do, and then expecting like, God, aren't you so pleased with that, without giving Him actually our hearts, and so that's where we started.
Yeah. Yeah. So much sounds similar where the sense even too of the like that Isaiah 58 brings out that we're doing this fast. Why doesn't God hear us? And how often or in what places does that currently exist now, where we're doing a thing, a spiritual practice, or I would even attach it to a ministry, something we're thinking like, God, aren't you here? Aren't you a part of this? Where are you? We're doing this thing. And so why are you not hearing our cries or attuned to us? And even what Isaiah is offering in that text is like, here's what God, here's the fast that I would want, right? It isn't more sacrifices. It isn't more oil. Actually, I want your heart. I want you to care. I want you to care for and be with me in my presence. But also, if that's the desire, then here's what that looks like. That looks like seeing the needs of others, recognizing that there is injustice, and being people that doesn't just continue on with how you already live anyway, right? Even Isaiah 58 talks about how there was arguing and quarreling and dissension among them, even in the midst of the fast. Like, how is this a fast that honors God? How is this a fast that actually the presence of God would want to be a part of?
Mhm.
And that's where I even in today's day, in our time here in the present, what are the things that exist for us where we're stepping in? It's like, God, why don't you hear our cry? And it's like, God replying, why would I be there? Why would I be in the midst of that if this is what's existing? Your heart, you're doing this practice, but your hearts are far from me.
Right. Yeah, because we've made the practice or the program or the ministry or whatever the end goal.
Yeah,
And I think that's an echo from the week before. That's also some of what we were in yesterday and just in other spaces is like, do we recognize, in fact, we were even talking about this a little bit yesterday morning, but do we recognize the presence is the blessing and that's the goal and the presence being like relationship with God? Do I recognize that that's the thing? Like, is that the thing I desire more than anything else? Um, because if that's true, then what I understand about the practices or even the way we do church, what that should be is that those things should create a space where I get to meet the Father.
yeah,
And clear out the clutter, quiet the noise, create intentional space, whatever. And so those practices are good for that. But if I've made the practice the goal, like I want to be a really good Sabbath keeper, or I want to be, we were talking about it on practicing the way last week do it in the fasting practice of like the goal is not, hey, I fasted 52 times this year and like look at me go, I'm a weekly faster. The goal is like, do I recognize that when I do this and if I will humble my spirit, if I'll submit my body in this way, I actually get to meet God. It creates space for me to meet God and to be in his presence in a way that I otherwise don't, or that I might miss. And so the with all of the laws, that's what I think had ended up happening, but it happens for us too. And we're like, okay, we've got to do these things. And God's like, I just want you. I want your heart.
hmm yeah. And how often are we like, but I've done this really good thing. I've kept the law, or I've practiced this thing so well. Um, aren't you pleased with that? And while at the same time, uh, yeah, I'm even going back to Isaiah, like, have I cared for my neighbor? Have I loved um, my neighbor? Have I seen where there is hurting that exists around me, and have I done anything about it? Have I stepped into it? In that sense, especially in that sense of fasting, which for me has been one of those ways in which we did talk about this in our fasting practice with the group about the aligning my entire being, my body, my soul, my mind in alignment with God. That ought to give me eyes to see the world the way that God sees the
Yeah.
world, right? The hurt that is there, those that are marginalized, those are individuals who God's bringing, uh, um, into my view. Here,
Right.
here is someone, or here are those that I've asked you to care for and to love.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is why, yeah. One of the things that was landing was like, if if the Israelite people, if God's people uh, had actually understood the purpose of the law and walked it out well, they would have looked like Jesus. And that reminded me, and I know we've talked about this on the podcast, but it reminds me of the story that Marty talks about in Bema with his friend Moshe. That's like if the Messiah is here,
Yeah.
this is what I would expect to see. And there's a wrestle, there's a tension for this man who's like, uh, it when the Messiah comes, it's supposed to usher in a period of the kingdom breaking through. And I should see some restoration in big ways, and I should see some of the brokenness be removed. And how often as Christians we are like, we're just going to follow these rules and these religious laws, many of which are actually like secondary things that have been put in place as like barriers, right? And so we're just going to follow these things instead of understanding or recognizing like the law is actually to bring us in closer to the Father. And when we do that, we actually will be about the business of restoring the brokenness because that's what he's doing and that's where we find him.
Mhm.
Um, and so that even that idea of like, what would it look like if we were following God's laws and rules and commands? Well, it would look like Jesus.
Yeah.
And Jesus was disruptive to the empire that existed at the time, and so we should be also for disruptive both for the uh those who were not God's chosen people, but also for those who had taken empire and dressed it up as kingdom
Mhm.
is how I don't know, that always lands for me. For the religious leaders of the time, Jesus was disruptive.
Yeah. Yeah. That brings to mind a conversation I had last night with we had a game, a basketball game, and so I was talking with the principal at the school we were at. She used to be here in the area and then went and now is principal at another school. And so I had a chance to just talk with her as she was there cheering on the kids playing in the game before ours. And one of the things we were talking about, because I guess yesterday was a day in which students gathered downtown. So student body from the middle school, student body from the high school gathered downtown in their city as a form of protest and protest to what's currently going on and where things that they're seeing that they don't like anyway. So um, she was asking, like, did our school did do the same? And we it didn't happen. So anyway, she was just talking about like the conversation she's had with these middle school students who um, like see in the world that they see through their eyes. What is it that they see, and where is it that they're stirred up or bothered or have a concern? And in some ways, that concern comes out like in protest where they spray paint in the bathroom.
Hmm.
And she goes, "Who? What is and talking to these students and like." Um, who is it that you're trying to get attention? Because in this way, you're getting my attention
Hmm.
and vandalism. But if you're wanting to get the attention of like how our world or how our country is um, dealing with certain things, like this is only getting my attention.
Yeah.
You have a voice, and you are welcome to use it. In fact, we live in a country in which you can. And so talking through the ways in which it looks to share your voice, to be a voice for if you're sensing or seeing injustice, to call it out and and you have a voice there. But in ways that it looks like, yeah, if we're just going to spray paint in the bathroom, that's not using your voice in a way that's actually now vandalism. And I'm not sure what you're wanting to communicate to the wider world of you have an issue, but there are places in which you can do that. And so that even the question of like, well, can I then go downtown after school and with the rest of these students and be a part of this rally? And she goes, yes. Yes, you can. Absolutely. But in the way the conversation then evolved into this, like I think for me, the question to wrestle with is, God, what does it look like to live righteously, to embody Jesus, and going back to God's statement to Cain, if you do what is right, will you not be accepted? our conversation evolved back into this. Like, I think that's the conversation that's worth wrestling about because everything else we talk about then only sits at the surface, right? What are injustice we see in the world? What are the struggles or the systems of sin or that all sits at the surface. Everyone sees it. But if we're having the conversation of like in ways that God's convicted me
Hmm.
to embody his presence and nature into this world. Now we're having a conversation of how of the righteousness of Christ in me and through me into this world.
Yeah, well, and we've had a few conversations that feels like an echo of a few conversations you and I have had even recently. And I can't remember if some of that was on the podcast or not, but even around service, like we were talking about last week, and because so often what we tend to do is everything feels so big and
Yeah,
so heavy.
right.
How do I be righteous in this world in 2026?
So
Or
much
how do I
brokenness.
solve this problem? Or yeah, I mean, to pick any of these things, they're way too big. Um, and they're so big that they can be paralyzing or crippling, right?
Mhm.
So that I can't do anything. This is too much. It's too big. It's too heavy. Um, and I don't know. I guess for me, it that lands in a space of like, well, then doesn't evil win? Is that not like
Mhm.
it doesn't actually even have to get us to do anything wrong if he can just paralyze us or immobilize us because it feels too big.
Mhm.
And so the idea of quietly living a life that's shaped like Jesus and asking the question for me, and I don't know, it's even dialing it back to like, I don't even have to necessarily ask God, what is my life overall? What do you want that to look like? But in this moment, in this space right now, what would it look like for me to be shaped like Jesus in
Mhm.
this way?
Yeah.
Um, and if that's so like, that feels so simple, but if in every space I'm stepping into or showing up, God, I want to look like you in this place,
Mhm.
in this conversation I'm about to have, when I go through the checkout line at this store, when I have to make this phone call, like in every space, what would it look like to look like you here? And actually, again, if we dial that back a step further, what that means is I actually have to spend enough time with him that I know the answer to
Mhm.
that. Like,
Yeah.
okay, I've spent so much time with you, and this is where this all is such, it's all connected and such an echo, but the mannerisms, like, I've spent so much time with God that some of that starts to naturally come out. And I don't have to like wrestle with the question of like, what would it look like to be Jesus in this space? I already know because that's what exists in me because I've spent so much time with him.
Yeah, and
And
what doesn't it even answer the question in that kind of way to what Jesus ends that portion of Matthew 5 with which is like unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will not inherit the kingdom of heaven. And it's like they knew the law and they followed it, but they didn't have a heart that was attuned to the Father. They were following the letter of the law but not the heart of it. So when Jesus starts healing and doing things on the Sabbath, which is against the law, not against the Ten Commandments, but against the law that they had created as fence posts around it. Now they're like, you are a sinner, you're a lawbreaker. They had followed the letter law, but missed the heart of the Father.
yeah, yeah, so we ended with Jeremiah 31, 33 to 34, which says, "This is the new covenant I'll make with my people, with the
Yeah.
people of Israel after those days. I'll put my instructions deep within them, and I will write them on their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people. And they will not need to teach their neighbors, nor will they need to teach their relatives, saying, 'You should know the Lord.' For everyone from the least to the greatest will know me already, and I will forgive their wickedness and never again remember their sins." And
Yeah.
that idea of even this phrase of like Jesus, actually what he's inviting is an internal transformation, not external confirmation
Yeah.
and or conformity.
Mhm.
And so often with the law, that's what we're doing. Like I've conformed, I've
Mhm.
decided I want to be a Christian, and so I've conformed to the religion the way that that looks. I go to church on Sundays, I might tithe, maybe I'm involved in a ministry, whatever. But if I haven't changed the internal piece, which is actually the abundant life invitation Jesus
Right.
offers,
Yeah.
and first of all, I'm going to fall short of that conformity every time. And in doing that, I have to think through that every time. Okay, what are the rules I'm supposed to follow? What are the things
Mhm.
I can and can't do? And I've missed the space where I get to actually have God's law written on my heart
Right.
in a way that changes me from the inside out.
Yeah. Yeah, which is where our conversation ended yesterday with the principal. of I'd made the statement like we've seemed to have lost the ability to see the Imago Dei in people, the image of God on all people. And she made this statement of like, yeah, and many of those that she's talking with don't believe what we believe. Don't believe that there's a God and that and that Jesus, his son, came to earth to save us from our sins, give us a way back to God, give us now become our mediator, goes before God on our behalf. Um, and I was like, yes. And if the world has any hope to know that there's a God that loves them, we have to live this out.
Yeah.
We have to live it out in such a way that we see the Imago Dei in people around us, that we recognize that you were made in the image of God. Now, how you may be living out your life or things going on may not be representative of the image of God, but you yourself as a created being here living on earth are made in the image of God.
Right.
And can I in a relationship call attention to that? Or in my own life, can I move from this, like you talked about, this external compliance, like I'm following the letter of the law, I know what I'm supposed to be doing, to an internal alignment that actually it's Christ in me that helps me live this kind of way, empowering me to live the life that's obedient to the Father, not because I've checked the boxes, but because there's such a desire within me to be aligned to the Father, to be in right relationship with Him, because I delight in that, and He delights in me. Right? Am I recognizing that there's both and in that? He delights to be with me. So wants to be with us in the way that I want to have delight to be with Him.
Yeah. And will I be transformed in such a way that I choose to see people, that I see the Imago Dei in people, even if they never
Hmm.
conform
Conform or
in that
change. Correct.
Because that's what, I don't know, that it baffles me how often we as followers of Jesus, it's like we expect the world around us who doesn't know Jesus to have externally conformed or whatever to these ways, and so we're appalled. Well, they don't act like, and it's like they don't. Yeah, but they don't know Jesus. So
Mhm.
why is that the expectation, and why is that the like that we argue with that, like, well, the other side, and it doesn't actually matter what side,
Correct.
either way, the other side, and like, okay, but isn't that like, I don't know, isn't that something we even tell our kids, like when the boys are doing something and they get in trouble, and it's like, well, and I'm like, I don't care. I'm talking about
Hmm.
you right now. You're
Hmm.
responsible for your actions. This is like such base level. And so
Yeah.
for us as followers of Jesus, the expectation that the world around us would actually look like the kingdom when they actually haven't met Jesus and the heart transformation hasn't taken place, it doesn't make any sense unless what we're also doing is just conforming externally and we also haven't found that transformation that allows us to like step into a world of brokenness that is going to, I mean, how many times we're reading first and second Peter regularly, right? How many times is Peter talking about this suffering we're going to experience for Jesus? Like, do we recognize like that? I only hold up under that if it's an internal transformation
Yeah.
because I know like that I've got God's spirit in me. I've got Jesus walking, working through me, transforming me. That's the
Mhm.
only space that that works.
Yeah. Well, in the Jeremiah 31, God's going to do that. People who have the law written on their hearts and are in community in that way, God's going to do that. I'm
Yeah.
responsible for myself, but there is something about the community piece in which God brings together that helps us to walk this out faithfully, right? So if I am doing this on my own and I don't have faithful followers of Jesus who are around with me to
Right.
ask the accountable questions, to wrestle of like, well, in this way, what does it look like? What does righteousness look like, right? To have those kinds of conversations, to wrestle that out, to say, hey, I'm not seeing the Imago Dei in people in this way. There is something about the community piece that we come around, the example that comes to mind is even in the basketball team I'm coaching. We've gotten to a place where it's like you have got to cover for one another. If you are only concerned on defense, And I realize I'm going to offer a sports
Oh,
analogy, so
I'm
I'm going to walk you through this.
I'm following.
But in the ways on defense, that if you're only concerned with one player, there are four other players on the court, 10 in total, 5 and 5. And so if you are one person and like, I only have number 10, number 10's the player that I have. And as long as I'm just taking care of number 10, that's all I have to worry about. Well, that's not actually how it works in basketball. There's something that's called team defense. And in fact, you have to cover for one another. You have to help each other. If someone gets beat, are you the closest man there to help them? That's the piece where it's like, in this way, how do we walk this out together? I can't only be concerned with myself. I have to, in community with fellow believers, say, hey, I'm here with you to walk with you as you are walking with me in ways that I need counsel or help or just a friend to sit with and pray with. I'm here with that. And in the same way, I return that. I am here in this kind of way, that's what this community looks like. That if we want to um, see Jeremiah 31 take place, it isn't just me. I actually have to be together in community to ask these questions, to walk this out together.
Yeah, to remind one another of what's true about God when other voices get loud, right?
Yeah.
And so in those spaces where inevitably, because life is hard and Jesus told us it would be, in those spaces where yeah, where maybe we've forgotten or maybe we're wrestling with like what is true. I do need those people around me to speak truth in. Don't forget what God said. Don't forget who you know him to be. But those people are people who follow Jesus. If I'm expecting the world
Yeah.
around me
Yeah.
to
Right.
offer that,
No.
that's so misguided. And that's what we've done, I think, so often throughout history, is that we've created this expectation. Like we actually want the systems and the policies around us to just hold that straight for us. It
Hmm.
doesn't cost me as much, actually. Then I don't have to get into the mess of it, the wrestle of it. Let's
Yeah.
just make the rules look like that, which is some of what the Pharisees did in the first
Yeah,
place.
and
That's what
isn't
the
that what
rules and
Jesus is
barriers.
calling out, right?
Yes,
It is like I haven't come to abolish these laws.
right.
I've come to fulfill it. Now, I do wonder if Jesus is actually offering all of the laws that are in the Torah of how there's, or if it's the commands. If it's the Ten
Well,
Commandments. I've not come to abolish this.
so, okay, so what I read was that when Jesus says, anytime that law and prophets is together, because it's not, this specific verse in Matthew 5 is not the only place that this is called out. Anytime law and prophets are together, the Hebrew people would have heard the entirety of the Old Testament, their entire Bible.
Yeah.
And so, in that, because that does change this a little bit, uh, Jesus ultimately is like not only talking about these laws or commands, like this is not just the 613 Levitical laws,
Mhm.
it's not just the 10 commandments. What he's saying is like, I'm the fulfillment, like I have come to make full every part of this Hebrew Bible that you have that helps you understand who God is and who you are and what the world's supposed to look like. I've come to fill every part of that full. And so in doing that, what I've done is I've given you this I've displayed the intent of these laws. I've shown you what it looks like. I've filled the places you'll never be able to fill that you weren't able to fill. And
Mhm.
I've shown you what it looks like to walk this out. And that is beyond just like following the laws. That's where that heart piece of like, do we recognize that all of scripture is actually part of this story where God's showing us what it looks like to be his people, to be humanity the way he designed us to be.
Yeah, to walk and to live with God, to walk and to live with others, right? If Jesus is questioned about what's the greatest command, it's like it's the Shema. It's love God
Right.
with your heart, mind, soul, and strength. And then he goes, in the second is like it, love your neighbor as yourself. Um, so in pairing that together, if all the laws and commands hang on this,
Yeah.
here's how I'm Jesus being the one who is going to help us to live and to walk with God and to live and to walk with others.
Well, and not just the laws and the commands, because that's the phrase he uses there is the same thing, law and prophets. So if everything that we know, the people he's talking to at that time, their compass, their guide is the Hebrew Bible.
Yeah.
Everything that they know and understand about who God is, who they are, and the way the world works exists in the Hebrew Bible. And what Jesus is saying is that all of that hangs on these two things. Love
Yeah.
God with all your heart, soul, and mind. Love your neighbors as yourself. that only makes sense when we understand that the law was given so that God's people could dwell with him. Like it was
Yes,
made
right.
to create a shape that says, now my presence can once again dwell with you the way I designed it to be in the first place. And
Yeah.
so it's not a getting rid of any of that. It's a filling full of all of it.
Right. Yeah. As you just, yeah, already mentioned. Yeah. He has come so that with all this would be full and life abundant, right? He's come to offer this.
Yeah.
All right. As we wrap up this episode, what would you say is a Kairos? What are you hearing from God, and how are you being invited to respond?
Yeah. This is landing for me just right now in this conversation again, and this is an echo of the reminder that I don't want to get too far out ahead of myself. And so, right now, in this moment and in this day, in every space I sit in, what's it look like for me to be shaped like Jesus in the way I show up, and not get so far out ahead of myself that it's paralyzing or overwhelming, or that I tend. The other thing that happens, at least for me, the further out I get, the more I tend to put my own, like, here's probably how this should look. Here's probably how I could fix this. Here's probably how and I intend to put myself into it or try to take control of it. And so the reminder of like stepping back and asking, like, am I spending so much time with God? Am I abiding well? So that that's what comes out of me. When the world bumps into me, it's the God's spirit that comes out. And then in each moment, I'm not asking what my life as a whole needs to look like, but right now in this moment, what's it look like to be Jesus in the space I'm showing up in?
Yeah. Yeah, for me, the Kairos is kind of a combination of the questions I ended with. One of them is, do my spiritual practices reflect the heart of God or just my habits? Um, and then the second question is, my obedience shaped by fear, duty, or delight? And there's something in there I'm wrestling with. Okay, Lord, what is the? You've gotten my attention here. I'm still sitting in these questions, um, and pondering. Yeah, do my spiritual practices reflect the heart of God or just a habit? Like this is just something I do, but I don't quite have, there isn't the heart transformation or the example I used was like shifting a fast day 12 hours from where it currently sits on a Monday to a Tuesday midday to a Wednesday midday. That totally threw me off. It's like I'd never fasted before. My body didn't know what was going on, versus a Wednesday that had become over the last number of years has become such a predictable pattern. My body no longer responds in the same kind of way that then I wonder, am I mindful that God's with me? If fasting is meant to make me more attuned to the presence of God, has it become a habit and where I'm less attuned? And what other spaces or habits in my life am I less attuned to the presence of God when initially when I started them were meant so that I would sense his presence more?
Right.
And so I don't have a lot of answers there. I'm doing a lot of searching and discerning, God, what is it? If fasting is one of those that came to mind even on Sunday, what other spaces have just become habits or practices, but really don't offer a heart transformation or I'm attuned to his presence with me? And then the other one is my obedience shaped by fear, duty, or delight of like, and this is also some of my upbringing or just as a kid growing up in the church, honestly, like, here's what you need to do, go do that, just do this and do it the right way. Am I obeying God out of delight, right? The thought of delight, in obeying God that would be a delight as growing up as a kid. And maybe this is just the nature of being a delinquent child who is all kinds of trouble for his parents. The thought of like obedience and delight don't always share the same plane
Hmm.
within my soul.
Hmm.
But there is something that's where I'm caught on that question. There is something here of like, actually, I desire to be obedient and I desire for there to be delight in that obedience. Because that sounds like the goodness of God.
Right. Yeah.
So still, I don't think I've got to like, what am I going to do about it? But it's just some mining out. There's those questions are sticking for me and discerning what are those areas that I'm not attuned to his presence? And then also, where is it that obedience has not been a delight and why?
Yeah, it's good.
So,
It's good stuff.
yeah. Hey guys, thanks for listening in and being with us on this episode. We hope and pray that your conversations are going beyond Sunday. In what you heard in this one, I think we were all over the place, Shreya. But this is kind of how it goes in these conversations as we go beyond Sunday of what God is still stirring in our hearts. And so we hope and pray that you too are God stirring in your heart and soul, and that you are having conversations that go beyond Sunday. So have a great week.